The cursor blinked ominously on Rajesh Malhotra's computer screen as he watched $20,000 drain from Charlotte's bank account in real time. What he didn't know was that someone else was watching him. Charlotte Brennan, a single mother of two from Ohio, had just fallen victim to one of the most sophisticated phone scams of the year. Her life savings gone in minutes. But this story isn't just about another scam. It's about what happened when the wrong person decided to fight back, and how far one man would go to make things right. 3 days earlier, Charlotte's phone rang at exactly 2:15 p.m. The caller ID showed a number that looked official, professional. She answered without hesitation. The voice on the other end was calm, authoritative. Rajesh had practiced this script thousands of times, perfecting his American accent, his tone of urgency mixed with helpfulness. He told Charlotte her social security number had been compromised, that criminals were using her identity to open credit cards. The fear in her voice was exactly what he wanted to hear. For the next 2 hours, Rajesh walked Charlotte through his elaborate web of lies. Bank transfers, security protocols, verification process, each step designed to steal everything she had. If you're finding this story as infuriating as I am, please hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more content exposing these predators. Meanwhile, 8,000 miles away in Seattle, a cybersecurity expert we'll call Marcus was monitoring suspicious network traffic. Something caught his attention. Marcus had dedicated his life to hunting scammers after his own grandmother lost her retirement savings to a similar scheme. This wasn't just work for him, it was personal. The digital breadcrumbs led him straight to Rajesh's operation in Mumbai, a call center disguised as a legitimate business, running dozens of scams simultaneously. Marcus watched in real time as Charlotte's money disappeared. He could see her bank account, her transaction history, her desperate attempts to verify what was happening. That's when Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He wasn't just going to stop this scam. He was going to destroy their entire operation. The virus he created was elegant in its simplicity. It would spread through their network, corrupt their files, and broadcast their location to every law enforcement agency he could reach. At exactly 9:30 a.m. Mumbai time, every computer in Rajesh's call center began displaying the same message. Your crimes have consequences. Rajesh felt his stomach drop as he realized what was happening. Their carefully constructed operation was crumbling in real time, and someone was watching their every move. But Marcus wasn't finished. As the scammers scrambled to save their data, he began broadcasting their personal information over their own speakers. Rajesh Malhotra, apartment 4B, Linking Road, Bandra West. The voice was calm, methodical, terrifying in its precision. One by one, Marcus read out every scammer's name, address, and photograph. The hunters had become the hunted, and they knew it. Within hours, the call center was empty. Rajesh and his team had fled, leaving behind computers, phones, and years of stolen money they couldn't access. But Marcus had underestimated their desperation. 2 weeks later, they resurfaced in a new location, thinking they were safe from his digital reach. They were wrong. Marcus had been monitoring every digital footprint they left behind. The moment they went online, he found them again. This time, he didn't just crash their computers, he took control of their phone system and began calling their victims directly, warning them about the scam. The psychological warfare was devastating. Rajesh watched helplessly as months of preparation crumbled. His team was terrified, paranoid, jumping at every notification. The final blow came when Marcus broadcasted their new location to local authorities. Police sirens wailed in the distance as the scammers realized they were trapped. Rajesh made the call that ended everything. "Shut it down," he told his remaining team members. "Delete everything. We're done." But Charlotte never got her money back. Neither did the hundreds of other victims whose savings had already been transferred and laundered beyond recovery. Marcus stared at the list of victims, their stolen amounts, their desperate pleas for help. The scammers were gone, but the damage remained irreversible. That's when he made a decision that surprised even himself. If the system couldn't return their money, he would do it personally. Over the next month, Marcus quietly transferred money from his own accounts to Charlotte and 12 other victims who had lost everything. He never told them who he was or why he helped. The money simply appeared with a note, from someone who believes in justice. Rajesh disappeared completely after that, his digital footprint scrubbed clean. Some say he returned to legitimate work, others believe he's still out there, too afraid to scam again. Marcus continues his work, hunting scammers and protecting victims. His identity remains hidden for his safety, but his mission never wavers. This story represents just one victory in an endless war. Hundreds of similar incidents happen daily, but not every victim finds a guardian angel. Take this as education, not entertainment. Verify every unexpected call, protect your information, and remember that if something sounds too urgent, it probably is. The aftermath of shutting down Rajesh's operation left Marcus staring at a harsh reality. Victory felt hollow when he realized the true scope of the damage already done. His encrypted communication channels lit up with messages from other cybersecurity experts worldwide. Word had spread about his takedown of the Mumbai operation. But Marcus couldn't celebrate. Charlotte's case file remained open on his secondary monitor. Her $20,000 loss a constant reminder of his limitations. He began tracking the money trail, following digital breadcrumbs through a maze of cryptocurrency exchanges and offshore accounts. The funds had vanished into the dark web. Meanwhile, Charlotte sat in her living room, explaining to her 8-year-old daughter Emma why they couldn't afford the school trip to the Science Museum anymore. Emma's younger brother Tyler didn't understand why Mommy cried when the bills came. He just knew their favourite cereal wasn't in the grocery cart anymore. The psychological toll on Charlotte was devastating. She jumped every time her phone rang, paranoid that another scammer might be calling to finish what Rajesh started. Marcus discovered that Rajesh's operation had targeted over 300 victims in the past year alone. The stolen amounts ranged from $500 to $50,000. Among the victims was 72-year-old Robert Chen, a retired teacher who lost his entire pension in a single afternoon. His wife had been battling cancer. There was Maria Santos, a nurse who worked double shifts to support her disabled son. The scammers took her savings meant for his medical equipment. Each victim's story carved deeper into Marcus's conscience. The technical victory over Rajesh felt meaningless against this human suffering. That night, Marcus made a decision that would drain his own life savings. He opened his personal banking app and stared at his account balance. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. She had always taught him that those with the ability to help had the responsibility to act. The first transfer went to Charlotte. $20,000, exactly what she had lost. Marcus typed a simple message with the transaction. Charlotte was feeding Tyler breakfast when her phone buzzed with the bank notification. She nearly dropped her coffee mug when she saw the deposit amount. Her hands shook as she called the bank, certain it was another scam. The representative confirmed the deposit was legitimate, from an anonymous benefactor. Marcus continued through his list, transferring funds to Robert Chen next. The old man's pension was restored with a single click. Robert collapsed into his chair when he saw the deposit. For the first time in months, he could afford his wife's medication without choosing between rent and treatment. Maria Santos received her transfer while working a night shift at the hospital. She had to excuse herself to the supply closet to process what had happened. One by one, Marcus restored what the scammers had stolen. His own account dwindled with each transfer, but his resolve only strengthened. By dawn, Marcus had emptied his savings account completely. 13 victims had their money returned, their faith in humanity partially restored. The anonymous messages accompanying each transfer became legendary among the victims. Justice finds a way became their rallying cry for hope. Charlotte used part of her restored funds to take Emma and Tyler to the Science Museum. Their laughter echoed through the planetarium. She also started a support group for scam victims, turning her trauma into a mission to help others heal and protect themselves. Robert Chen's wife received her cancer treatment without interruption. The couple renewed their wedding vows in their small apartment, grateful for unexpected mercy. Maria Santos finally bought the wheelchair her son needed. Watching him navigate their home independently brought tears of joy to her eyes. Marcus faced his own financial reality with surprising peace. His apartment lease was up for renewal, but he couldn't afford the deposit. He moved into a smaller studio apartment across town, selling his furniture to cover basic expenses. The sacrifice felt insignificant compared to his impact. The cybersecurity community learned of Marcus's personal sacrifice through encrypted channels. Donations began appearing in his accounts anonymously. His story inspired other white-hat hackers to target scammer operations more aggressively. A global network of digital vigilantes was born. Rajesh, meanwhile, had taken a legitimate job at a Mumbai tech company. The fear of being hunted again kept him awake at night. He tried to forget his past, but news of other scammer takedowns reminded him daily that digital justice was always watching. Charlotte's support group grew to over 50 members. They shared strategies for recovery and created a network of protection against future scams. The ripple effects of Marcus's actions continued spreading. Victims became advocates, survivors became protectors, and hope replaced despair. But this victory represents just one battle in an endless war. Every day, new victims fall prey to sophisticated scams, while their predators remain hidden in the shadows. Marcus's story spread through underground hacker forums like wildfire, but it also caught the attention of someone far more dangerous than any scammer he had ever faced. Viktor Petrov ran the largest scam coordination network in Eastern Europe, managing over 40 call centers across 6 countries. Marcus had just declared war on his entire empire. Viktor's network had stolen over $50 million in the past year alone. Unlike Rajesh's small operation, this was organized crime at an international level. The message Viktor sent to his lieutenants was simple and terrifying. Find the hacker who destroyed the Mumbai operation and make him pay for interfering with their business. Marcus had no idea he was being hunted. He continued his work from his small studio apartment, tracking new scammer operations across Southeast Asia. Charlotte's support group had grown beyond her wildest expectations. Victims from across the country were flying in to attend meetings, sharing their stories of loss and recovery. During one particularly emotional session, an elderly woman named Dorothy revealed she had lost her late husband's life insurance money to a romance scam. Dorothy's story broke something inside Charlotte. The scammers weren't just stealing money, they were destroying the final connections people had to their loved ones. That night, Charlotte made a decision that would change everything. She was going to find Marcus and convince him to help her take down the entire scammer network. Using clues from the anonymous transfers, Charlotte began her own investigation. The digital breadcrumbs were faint, but her motivation was stronger than any encryption. Meanwhile, Viktor's team had traced Marcus's digital signature to his general location in Seattle. They were closing in, and Marcus remained completely unaware. Marcus received an encrypted message from an unknown sender. The subject line read simply, "Thank you for saving my family." It was from Charlotte. Against every security protocol he had ever followed, Marcus agreed to meet Charlotte in person. Her story had touched something deep in his carefully guarded heart. They met at a small coffee shop in downtown Seattle. Charlotte recognized him immediately, not from any photo, but from the kindness in his eyes. Charlotte's first words weren't "thank you." Instead, she said, "There are thousands more like Dorothy who need our help. Will you teach me to fight back?" Marcus explained the dangers of what she was asking. These weren't just petty criminals, but organized networks with resources and connections to dangerous people. Charlotte's response silenced him completely. "They already took everything from me once. What more can they do? But now I have something they can't steal. Purpose." Unknown to both of them, Viktor's surveillance team was photographing their meeting from across the street. The hunter had found his prey. Viktor smiled as he reviewed the photos. The mysterious hacker had just made a fatal mistake by exposing himself, and now Viktor had leverage. That evening, Charlotte received a call that made her blood run cold. The voice was calm, professional, and terrifyingly familiar to her scammer trauma. "We have photos of you meeting with your hacker friend today. Unless he stops interfering with our operations, your children might have an accident." Charlotte immediately called Marcus, her voice breaking as she explained the threat. She begged him to stop his work to let the scammers win. Marcus felt rage unlike anything he had ever experienced. They had crossed a line by threatening an innocent mother and her children. Instead of backing down, Marcus made a promise that would escalate this conflict beyond anything Viktor had anticipated. They just made this personal. Marcus spent the next 72 hours without sleep, creating the most sophisticated virus he had ever designed. This wasn't just about shutting down operations anymore. The virus was designed to do more than crash computers. It would steal every file, every contact, every financial record from Viktor's entire network. Charlotte couldn't sleep, checking on Emma and Tyler every hour, jumping at every sound outside their house. The fear was consuming her. Viktor grew impatient, waiting for the hacker to surrender. He decided to send a more direct message by having his team vandalize Charlotte's car. The vandalism was Viktor's mistake. It gave Marcus the physical evidence he needed to trace the threat back to its source through security cameras. Within hours, Marcus had Viktor's real name, location, and complete criminal history. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Marcus launched his virus at exactly midnight, targeting every device connected to Victor's network simultaneously. The digital assault was devastating. Victor watched helplessly as decades of criminal records, financial accounts, and contact lists disappeared from his servers. His empire was crumbling, but Marcus wasn't finished. He began broadcasting Victor's personal information to every law enforcement agency in Europe, along with evidence of his crimes. The final blow came when Marcus transferred Victor's own stolen money to a fund for scam victims. Justice had found a way to redistribute the wealth. Charlotte received a text message the next morning. "The threat is over. Your children are safe. The war continues." It was signed simply, "A friend." Victor's arrest made international headlines within hours. Police raids across 6 countries dismantled his network simultaneously, but the victory came with an unexpected consequence that would haunt Marcus forever. The evidence Marcus had gathered was so comprehensive that prosecutors called it the most detailed cybercrime case file they had ever seen. Victor faced 300 years in prison. But as Marcus watched the news coverage from his studio apartment, a chilling realization crept over him. Victor's arrest had created a power vacuum, and something far worse was filling it. Within days of Victor's capture, Marcus detected new scam operations launching across the dark web. The criminals weren't disappearing, they were evolving, learning from Victor's mistakes. Charlotte tried to return to normal life, but the trauma had changed her fundamentally. Every phone call, every unexpected email sent her into panic attacks that left her gasping for air. Her support group had become her lifeline, but even there, new victims arrived weekly with stories that grew more sophisticated and devastating than anything they had heard before. Marcus received an encrypted message that made his blood freeze. It was from someone claiming to be Victor's successor, and they knew exactly who he was. The message contained photos of Marcus entering his apartment building, buying coffee, even sleeping in his studio. He had been under surveillance for weeks without knowing it, but the final photo in the message destroyed any hope Marcus had of staying hidden. It showed Charlotte hugging her children outside their school, crosshairs digitally added over their faces. Marcus realized he had made a fatal error in judgment. By becoming personally involved with Charlotte, he'd given his enemies the perfect weapon to control him. The new message was simple and direct. Stop all anti-scammer activities immediately, or Charlotte's family would pay the price for his interference. For the first time since beginning his crusade against scammers, Marcus considered surrender. The weight of protecting innocent lives felt heavier than any moral obligation. Charlotte sensed something was wrong when Marcus stopped responding to her messages. His sudden silence felt ominous after everything they had been through together. She decided to visit his apartment unannounced, bringing homemade cookies as a thank you gift. What she found there would change everything once again. Marcus opened the door looking like he hadn't slept in days. His apartment was packed with boxes, computer equipment partially dismantled, clearly preparing to flee. Charlotte pushed past him into the apartment, demanding to know why he was abandoning their mission. The argument that followed would test both their resolves. Marcus finally broke down and showed her the surveillance photos, the threats against her children. His voice cracked as he explained why he had to disappear. Charlotte's response surprised them both. Instead of fear, she felt rage. These criminals had stolen her money, terrorized her family, and now they were trying to silence her protector. She grabbed Marcus's laptop and began typing furiously, her fingers flying across the keyboard with purpose he had never seen from her before. Charlotte had been secretly learning cybersecurity skills for months, studying everything Marcus had taught her and more. She was no longer just a victim seeking justice. Together, they crafted a response to the threats that would either end this nightmare forever or escalate it beyond anything they could survive. Their plan was audacious and dangerous. Instead of hiding from Victor's successor, they would hunt him down using the same surveillance network he had used against them. Charlotte insisted on being the bait. She would pose as a new victim, allowing herself to be scammed while Marcus traced the operation back to its source. The call came at exactly 2:15 p.m, just like Rajesh's original scam. Charlotte answered with practiced vulnerability, but her eyes burned with calculated fury. As the new scammer walked Charlotte through his elaborate deception, Marcus's software was mapping every digital footprint, every connection, every vulnerability in their network. The scammer's mistake was underestimating his victim. Charlotte had learned to recognize every manipulation tactic, every psychological pressure point they used. When the scammer asked for her banking information, Charlotte provided details to a honeypot account Marcus had created, loaded with fake money to tempt them. The moment they attempted to steal from the honeypot account, Marcus's virus activated, spreading through their entire network like digital wildfire. But this virus was different from anything Marcus had created before. It didn't just steal data or crash systems, it turned their own surveillance network against them. Marcus and Charlotte watched in real time as the scammers realized they were being watched through their own cameras, their panic visible on every monitor. The psychological warfare was devastating. Marcus began broadcasting personal information about each scammer through their own speakers, just as he had done to Rajesh. Charlotte took the microphone and addressed them directly, her voice carrying the pain of every victim they had ever hurt, the strength of every survivor who refused to stay silent. Within hours, the entire operation had collapsed. The scammers fled, leaving behind computers full of evidence that would put them away for decades. Marcus and Charlotte had won, but they both knew this was just one battle in an endless war. Somewhere else, new scammers were already planning their next victims. The cycle would continue, but now they had something the scammers didn't expect. A network of survivors who refused to remain victims, ready to fight back with knowledge, courage, and unbreakable determination. 3 months after their victory, Charlotte discovered something that would shatter everything she thought she knew about Marcus. Hidden in his encrypted files was a list of victims he had chosen not to help. The list contained over 200 names, people who had lost everything just like she had. But Marcus had deemed them somehow unworthy of his personal sacrifice. Among the declined victims was a single father named David who had lost his daughter's college fund to romance scammers. His desperate emails to Marcus went unanswered. Charlotte confronted Marcus in his new apartment, the list printed and scattered across his coffee table like evidence of a crime he couldn't deny. Marcus's explanation cut deeper than any scammer's lie. He had only helped victims whose stories would generate the most emotional impact for his growing online following. The anonymous hacker who had saved her family was actually building a brand, monetizing their pain for views and donations from his secret YouTube channel. Charlotte felt physically sick as she realized she had been performing in Marcus's carefully orchestrated theater of digital justice, her gratitude manufactured for content. But Marcus's betrayal paled in comparison to what Charlotte discovered next. The surveillance photos that had threatened her children were never sent by Victor's successor. Marcus had fabricated the entire threat to manipulate Charlotte into becoming his partner, knowing her protective instincts would make her the perfect co-star for his content. The realization that her children had never been in danger, that she had been terrorized by the very person she trusted most, broke something fundamental inside Charlotte. Marcus tried to justify his actions, claiming that his methods helped more victims overall, that the ends justified his manipulative means. Charlotte's response was quiet and devastating. She told Marcus he had become exactly what they were fighting against, a predator who exploited vulnerable people for personal gain. That night, Charlotte made a decision that would destroy Marcus's carefully constructed empire. She began documenting everything, preparing to expose his manipulation to the world. She reached out to David and the other declined victims, building a network of people Marcus had abandoned for not being photogenic enough for his content. Meanwhile, Marcus discovered Charlotte's investigation and panicked. His entire reputation, his income, his identity as a digital hero hung in the balance. He attempted to discredit Charlotte by releasing edited recordings of their conversations, painting her as an unstable victim, seeking attention and revenge. But Charlotte had learned from the best. She had been recording everything since discovering his deception, and her evidence was unedited and damning. The confrontation came during a live stream Marcus was hosting about cybersecurity. Charlotte appeared in his chat, then called in as a guest. With thousands of viewers watching, Charlotte calmly presented evidence of Marcus's manipulation, his fake threats, his selective victim assistance based on content value. Marcus tried to cut the stream, but Charlotte had anticipated this. She had already sent the evidence to every cybersecurity forum and victim advocacy group online. The cybersecurity community that had once celebrated Marcus turned on him with the same intensity they reserved for the scammers he had fought. Within hours, Marcus's YouTube channel was demonetized, his speaking engagements cancelled, his reputation in ruins. The hunter had become the hunted once again. But Charlotte wasn't finished. She used Marcus's own techniques to trace his hidden assets, the money he had earned from exploiting victim stories. She discovered Marcus had made over $300,000 from his victim rescue content, money earned from their pain and his manufactured heroism. Charlotte's final move was elegant in its justice. She seized Marcus's assets through legal channels and distributed every penny to the victims he had ignored. David received his daughter's college fund back just weeks before enrollment deadlines. His tears of gratitude were genuine, unlike the manufactured emotion Marcus had sought. One by one, the forgotten victims received the help Marcus had denied them, their stories finally heard by someone who cared about justice over content. Marcus disappeared from the internet entirely, his social media accounts deleted, his digital presence scrubbed clean. The hero's journey had ended in exile. Charlotte transformed her support group into something Marcus never could have imagined, a genuine community focused on healing rather than content creation. She established strict principles for their victim assistance program. No publicity, no content creation, no exploitation of pain for any purpose other than healing. The network Charlotte built helped over 500 victims in their first year, each case handled with dignity and privacy Marcus had never offered. Sometimes Charlotte wondered if Marcus had ever genuinely cared about justice, or if every moment of their partnership had been calculated for maximum dramatic impact. The answer came in a letter Marcus sent months later. He admitted that helping her had started as content strategy, but somewhere along the way it had become real. But Charlotte had learned that good intentions could never justify manipulative methods. The road to hell was paved with content creators who thought they were heroes. Her story became a cautionary tale in cybersecurity circles, not about scammers, but about the heroes who exploit the very people they claim to save. 2 years after exposing Marcus, Charlotte received a phone call that would bring her story full circle. The voice on the other end was shaky, nervous, but unmistakably familiar. It was Marcus calling from a payphone in downtown Seattle. His voice cracked as he spoke, the confident digital warrior replaced by a broken man seeking redemption. He had been living in his car for months, unable to find work after his reputation was destroyed. But he wasn't calling to ask for forgiveness or help. Marcus had discovered something that made his blood run cold. A new scammer network was specifically targeting members of Charlotte's support group using their personal stories against them. The scammers had infiltrated their private forums, harvesting intimate details about each victim's trauma to craft perfectly tailored psychological attacks. Dorothy, the elderly woman who had lost her husband's life insurance, received a call claiming her late husband had secret debts that needed immediate payment. David's daughter was contacted directly on social media, told that her college fund was being investigated for fraud and needed to be transferred for protection. Charlotte felt her protective rage ignite again. These criminals weren't just stealing money anymore. They were weaponizing the healing process itself. Despite everything Marcus had done to her, Charlotte recognized that his skills were needed to stop this new threat. The enemy of her enemy had become necessary. Marcus revealed he had been tracking this network for weeks, living in his car outside internet cafes, using public Wi-Fi to avoid detection. The scammer operation was more sophisticated than anything they had faced before, using artificial intelligence to analyze victim psychology and craft perfect manipulation scripts. Charlotte made a decision that surprised them both. She would work with Marcus one final time, but under her terms, with complete transparency and no hidden agendas. Their plan required Charlotte to pose as a victim again, but this time she would be the hunter, not the prey. The performance would be her greatest challenge yet. The scammer who called Charlotte used her own words from support group meetings against her, describing her children's names and fears with chilling accuracy. As the scammer manipulated her with surgical precision, Charlotte felt genuine terror return. These criminals had turned her healing into a weapon against her. But Charlotte had learned something Marcus never understood. True strength came not from hiding vulnerability, but from facing it with courage and community support. When the scammer demanded payment, Charlotte provided access to a honeypot account, but this time it contained something unexpected alongside the fake money. The moment they accessed the account, Charlotte's virus didn't just trace their location. It began broadcasting their operation live to every victim advocacy group worldwide. The scammers realized they were being watched by an army of survivors, their crimes displayed for the world to see through their own security cameras. Charlotte spoke directly to them through their compromised speakers, her voice carrying the pain of every victim they had exploited, the strength of every survivor they had underestimated. She didn't threaten them with legal action or technical warfare. Instead, she told them about Dorothy's sleepless nights, David's daughter's tears, the human cost of their cruelty. The psychological impact was devastating. Several scammers simply walked away from their desks, unable to continue after hearing the true stories of their victims. Within hours, the entire operation collapsed not from technical sabotage, but from moral awakening. The scammers had been forced to see their victims as human beings. Marcus watched in amazement as Charlotte achieved something his technical skills never could. She had weaponized empathy, turning the scammers' humanity against their cruelty. The evidence they gathered led to arrests across 3 countries, but more importantly, it led to policy changes in how victim support groups protect member privacy. Charlotte's support group evolved into a global network with military-grade security protocols, ensuring their healing space could never be weaponized again. Marcus asked Charlotte for forgiveness, but she gave him something better. She offered him a chance to earn redemption through genuine service to victims. Under Charlotte's supervision, Marcus began using his skills to train victim advocates in cybersecurity. His expertise finally serving its intended purpose, Dorothy learned to recognize scammer tactics and began volunteering to help other elderly victims. Her grief transformed into protective wisdom. David's daughter graduated college debt-free and became a cybersecurity specialist herself, the next generation joining the fight against digital predators. Charlotte's children grew up understanding both the dangers and the power of technology, raised by a mother who had faced the worst and chosen to fight back. The network Charlotte built helped over 2,000 victims in its 3rd year, each case handled with the dignity and privacy that Marcus had never offered. Charlotte often reflected on how her worst day had led to her greatest purpose. The scammers had stolen her money, but they had also revealed her strength. This story represents just one victory in an endless war against digital predators. Hundreds of similar incidents happen daily, but not every victim finds protection or justice. Take this story as education, not entertainment. Verify every unexpected call, protect your personal information, and remember that real heroes work in statements, not for content. If this video helped you stay safe from scammers, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that protects you and your family. Share this story with elderly loved ones who need to see it.